cut off testimony from here. I think we've heard from both sides, both from the director of the commission and from a couple of people who are opposed. We've also, all of us had serial emails, and Dick also is going to enter into the record. Dick, do you want to say that?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Speaker. I have 2 letters here. One is dated November 10th, and it's from one of the people in my in town of Bourne regarding her visitation to Mr. Anderson, no relation to me, to his house on Blacksmith Shop Road and the noise level that she heard there, both her and her husband. Then I have another letter from another Bourne resident who's a Native American regarding his rights under the Indian Religious Freedom Act and American Indian Religious Freedom Act, and a few other things that he has listed in here, and what it has done to the potential has for his religious freedoms and rights as a Native American. So if I could get these entered into the
clerk in the elections record.
Into the minutes also.
Okay.
I have letters for the rest of the delegates if they didn't get them. Thank you.
The Assembly will now convene. The Assembly will now convene, and we have an ordinance unrelated to what we've just been discussing. Proposed ordinance 10-21 to authorize funds for the purpose of making loans to residents of the county for repairing, replacing, and/or upgrading residential septic systems. This is a yearly funding of a very valuable program, and I just throw it out to the delegates if they have any comments or questions on this, on the septic betterment program. Tom?
Mr. Speaker, I stand in favor of this ordinance. It's been a very, very good program for the county and the people of Barnstable County. I am prepared to make a motion.
You move to pass?
Move to pass ordinance 1021 to authorize funds for the purpose of making loans to residents of the county for repairing, replacing, and/or upgrading residential septic systems.
Okay, do I have a second on that? Okay, any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We don't need a vote on that, do we? We can do that. No, okay. We'll then move on to proposed ordinance 10-20, amendment to the regional policy plan per section 8H of chapter 716 of the Acts of 1989 as amended. This is the regulations concerning wind towers in DRIs. I don't imagine anybody has anything to comment on that. Oh, excuse me, Julia?
Well, I don't like to admit it, but I have been involved with the Cape Cod Commission and county government since 1989. And in fact, my whole reason for getting involved was because I was such a strong supporter of the concept of the commission. And since it's been established, I have continued to consider that the most important aspect of county government, and I have done everything I can to support, occasionally protect the commission. And one reason is because I am not going to be good at developing technical bulletins myself. I'm going to even have some limited success at reading technical papers. But fortunately, I have felt confident that the Commission has tried to seek a balance, and it has been successful in doing that. I have a history from before that with the Board of Appeals, 14 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals. You go to a lot of pretty messy hearings with a lot of screaming, unhappy people on both sides. I have, however, never attended hearings where all of the people who are being regulated are 100% in favor of the standards, whereas every single person who was opposed to the project was against the regulations. This is really backwards, and I don't understand it, except that I think it means that the regulations are not strict enough or not clear enough. I do agree that both parties benefit when regulations are in place and very clear. But I agree with Mr. Senni that the noise regulation is not sufficiently clear either to a proponent or an opponent of a wind turbine, and I don't feel that it will benefit us to pretend that it is, and that we are then safe and ready to proceed for either party. I'm also very unhappy that we don't have any thresholds, because I am very worried that projects are coming down the pike that we don't have regulation for. I am not anti-windmill. I would have supported, I can tolerate Cape Wind fine. I would have preferred we'd had regulation in place, and so I'm very eager to get this regulation done. But as I said in my question to Paul earlier, we've never turned back a Cape Cod Commission request because it was not strict enough. And I think we have consensus on the Assembly that we want regulation here, that we're not carrying the water for the people who, you know, want their projects, are against our NIMBYs and don't want anything to happen, and, you know, no. I think we want regulation and will be eager to spell out some of the things that we want, which is, I think, from my point of view, some of the suggestions Mr. Senni made make sense to me. Now, not pushing those per se, but they are more specific. So I would really love to have the Cape Cod Commission come back as soon as they can. And again, in the past, when we turned things down, which they didn't agree with us, it was hard for them to come back because they didn't agree with us. They didn't want to make the changes because they thought we were being too lenient. But this is the other way. It's the other way around for the first time that I can recollect, and I think it wouldn't be that hard for them to, regulators usually like to regulate, and it shouldn't be that challenging for the planners. So if, in fact, I'm speaking as some other are feeling, and I hope that'll be clear at the end, maybe good things can happen. As for the people who have been highly exercised on this issue because they are really frightened of wind turbines, and maybe with good reason, they also need to get into the act with their Cape Cod Commission member. So if you haven't already talked in detail with your commission, they're not on these mailing lists, so they don't seem to be on the same email list that we're getting, but both sides need to be talking to their Cape Cod Commission member, because they do have some say here, and they have some say in how resources are allocated. So if this is a pressing issue that needs to be up to speed double time, which I would like now, then that's people that need to have the pressure put on them. Teresa and I had a nice outing in Falmouth. I happen to live very close to the turbines, never heard a sound from them and can't see them, so it's never been an issue for me, but now I know lots more about it. And the flicker was kind of startling, which I wouldn't have known. Thankfully, I don't get migraine, so a few little minutes didn't matter. At any rate, I think we're going to have to do more with this, and I'm eager to do it. I think that to pass it would imply that this is good enough. I don't think it is, and I would like to see better soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For those that know me, I am a free market type. I believe in the free market, and I am not a big government type by any means. Not shocking to my colleagues. But here we are. We live on a beautiful peninsula, and we are obviously a very desirable location for this industry. And and we're very exposed. We don't have regulations in place, and we're not talking about really the industry. We're talking about encroachment on people's lives, people's personal private property rights. That's really what the issue's about. It's not about what it is. I mean, we could be talking about roller coasters encroachment. I don't care what it is. It's about encroachment on people's lives, and we don't have regulation in place to protect those personal private property rights. And, you know, earlier I kind of threw out there at our executive director that what's the possibility of putting together a land-based DCPC for all of Barnstable County? I'm shocked I'm even saying that. But really, what this is about is we're, you know, 15 elected officials here. We represent, you know, every single individual living in Barnstable County, and we have to protect them sometimes. And we have to protect them from encroachment that we have no regulations in place to protect them. And it is a growing industry. 10 years ago, nobody would have been saying, oh, gee, there could be a 500-foot, 2-megawatt tower. We wouldn't have thought about that. I mean, it's a growing industry. It's an industry that's changing constant. And I would like to explore this body remanding back the ordinance, but also asking both the Cape Cod Commission and our county commissioner, who's not here right now, about the possibility of putting together a land-based county-wide DCPC. Reason being is that although it gives us 12 months to create these regulations that I think we all are agreeing that we need, it doesn't mean it has to take 12 months. It really depends on the efficiency of Paul and his staff. And also what that would allow is that as we're putting together these regulations, that some industrious individuals don't just start putting in applications for permits under the guidelines. So instantly what it would do is it would give us, the households, the people of Cape Cod, the protection that we need until we can get a handle on this growing industry. And I just think that's the appropriate way to go, and I think that needs to be explored. I don't know who would propose it. I did hear that any elected body can do it. I don't think as a legislative body we can do that, but I think boards of selectmen and the county commissioners, again, I'm guessing, we have Paul here in the room that knows much better than I. But that's the area what I think is appropriate to protect the people of Cape Cod until we understand what this is all about.
I wanted to second what Julia was expressing, and to say that it seems to me that if it goes back to the commission, that I would hope it would go with a specific recommendation that they take a look at the setback, the safety setback regulation, which I believe was changed at the commission and is inconsistent with what the manufacturers recommend, and that they incorporate in the noise standard the language that the executive director has in his memo, because it seems to me that that would in fact make it a standard.
Yes, Chris?
At the risk of being naive, is there some restriction on the number of times a minimum performance standard can be amended that I'm unaware of? Is it?
I can get an answer if you suspend the rules.
So moved.
Okay, second. Second. Okay, Paul, can you like to comment?
There's no limit on how many times the minimum performance standard can be amended, and the Assembly of Delegates can nominate a DCPC. So the power is in your hands.
All right. Chris?
If I could just follow up on that, my point is that right now we have no minimum performance standards. Admittedly, there's shortcomings perceived by many of us with these performance standards. But it seems to me that something is better than nothing, particularly if there's no restriction on requesting that they be re-amended within a certain time frame, and at least something then would be in place for projects that may come down the pipe. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I have heard this debate now for quite a few weeks, and I sympathize greatly with those I mean, nobody can question the sincerity of the people who have testified that their lives have been disrupted by these and by the wind towers. But I've also heard from the executive director of the commission that right now he doesn't have any tools in place to deal with it. But without getting into the specifics of the regulation, I think what we have here is a political problem as well as a technical problem, because obviously there's a need for further regulations of wind towers. And the very fact that towers have been erected, and the one in Falmouth is an example, that have engendered serious opposition from the residents, shows that there are a lot of people looking for further regulation. So what do? Well, we can go to the towns, and we can go to the state, okay? But the state standards apparently are, and I'm not going to characterize Paul's comments, but they are promoting wind power, okay? And the town standards oftentimes are obsolete, or they're inconsistent, and many of the projects that are going up are, in fact, municipal projects. There's one going up for the RTA, which is a quasi-public agency, putting it up. So what's happened, what we're seeing here now in the last few weeks, is that people are seeking a venue by which they can protect their neighborhoods. What can we do? Well, we can go to the town. We can't go to the state. The towns seem to be inconsistent, but yet we have this regional planning agency, which can indeed, as Tom has emphasized, put further regulation on wind towers. So I'm seeing this political dynamic moving along, and it's coming at us. It's coming at the commission, and it's coming at the assembly, and that's what we do. I mean, we can't duck it. It's not like I wake up in the morning saying, geez, I want to have another wind tower debate, but I mean, unfortunately, for one reason or another, it's going to land in our laps, and it's going to continue to do that as time goes on. As more, even if the commission does adopt more standards, usually come before us. Now, I'm elected, as is everybody else in this room here, everybody else at this table, so we have some responsibility back to those constituents, and they can monitor our decisions and so on. It's an unfortunate consequence, and I'm not blaming the commission, that the real meat of these decisions as to whether or not we're going to further regulate these towers and what those regulations can consist of is not going to be made in a political forum like this. But if we follow the process, it's going to be made as people, the staff members of the Cape Cod Commission, develop technical bulletins. So really, I mean, if you're waiting out there to see when you can weigh in on getting further restrictions on noise and further restrictions on minimum performance standards, setbacks, and flicker, it's not like you can complain to me, because meanwhile I'm doing something else while somebody in the commission is making these technical bulletins. So in regards to what Julia is saying, I'm willing to take, as an elected official, I'm willing to take this on. I'm willing to have a more public input on not just our ability to regulate the wind towers, but exactly what level of regulations or what standards we're going to apply, so that not only can I, in my own mind, feel I'm fulfilling my responsibility, but we can offer this continued forum to the public, who are the ones affected, so that they can weigh in and they can have their feelings known, as not just in a public hearing last week and the week before, but on a continuous basis as these standards are being developed, if you understand what I'm saying. So we can't duck this. It's going to come before us. It's going to come before the commission. And I think that we have to develop a more comprehensive process that allows public input on all of the aspects of the regulation of the wind towers. We're fortunate enough to have a regional planning agency that allows us to do that. The regional planning agency passes ordinances that through us, so the process is set up. I hear the director of the Cape Cod Commission when he says, look, right now we have nothing, let's put something in place. It's going to take a long time, relatively speaking, to get those technical bulletins up. How much longer would it take if we decide a month from now, 2 months from now, that the protections are not adequate? So I'm beginning to lean toward trying to get a more comprehensive outlook on the wind turbines that come before us. I think Tom's suggestion, Tom Key's suggestion, is an excellent one. It's a very tough decision. There's points to be made on both sides, but I think it's inevitable that this body and the Cape Cod Commission are going to be intimately involved with the regulation and of wind towers and the development of wind towers all over the Cape, and I think we just have to accept that, bite the bullet, and take the public's concerns into consideration. So, Tom?
Because we can only vote this up or down, and by voting it down, we're sending it back, my preference would be in voting it down that I would want 3 aspects to the minimum standards reviewed. One would be the safety standard and setbacks. The second would be the noise standard that I think has a good point has been made about that not even existing. And the third would be the idea that I heard today about a trigger mechanism, whether there'd be a height that would then trigger the Cape Cod Commission stepping in so that they could bring the power of their review and expertise and talent that many of our towns frankly don't have, large or small. So I plan to vote to send it back, and those would be the 3 areas that I would want on the record that I hope that the Commission would address when they bring this back before us.
Okay. Do we have, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for the record, I think that probably most of you know that I am Yarmouth's representative to the Cape Light Compact, and I also serve as vice chairman of the governing board. And several years ago, we worked together to form the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. The purpose of this cooperative was for municipal energy for the towns. And I will say I was very much in favor of forming this cooperative and saw a lot of possibilities in it. And Ryan Christianberry spoke about it, that when we were talking about that and putting that portion of energy into the regional policy plan, nowhere in my mind were we talking about wind turbines 450 feet tall. I don't know what I imagined, but I did not imagine anything. An industrial turbine being put up on Cape Cod. And I'm not going to make any home runs with the Cape Light Compact, but I certainly cannot support this. I have a wonderful, a beautiful video of a flyover of the Cape, and I cherish it, and I'm going to cherish it even more because it doesn't have wind turbines on it. So I think there's a time and a place for everything, but I agree with what has been said about minimum standards and the setbacks. I would like to see that 3,000-foot setback placed back into the ordinance as it was originally stated. I think that people have the right to know that there's a possibility of a 400-foot turbine being in their backyard. And so I think that we need to do more study. So I'm not going to be able to support this at this time.
Okay. George?
I'm in favor of this ordinance, and I think that the work that's gone into it can be improved in the future, but I think we should get started on it. I agree with Paul's reasoning and the whole proposal. The NSTAR, when it was Com Electric, did a wind study on the Cape, on our end of the Cape about 1980. They found that this was the windiest place on the East Coast. And we're lucky we have the wind. One of the few natural resources we do have. So I'm in favor of it. I grew up in right underneath the Pearl River Monument on the leeward side in the wintertime, when the wind is blowing from the northwest almost every day. Almost every day. And there was a tower there, and it's still there. It's 80 feet high on top of a 100-foot hill. It was the weather signal tower, and it hasn't been used in the last maybe 30 years because the government discontinued it. But when they put the flags on that wind tower, that was actually more of a wind tower than especially and when the wind was blowing, it sounded, the flags, when they were wet, sounded as though they were being torn apart. It was like the exercise we had in the first grade after the Germans torpedoed the two ships off of Highland and killed a lot of people. We tore up sheets to make bandages, and 30 kids in the classroom tearing up sheets, and that's what it sounded like. But nobody complained about it. And when there weren't flags on the tower and the wind was blowing, the halyards would slap against the last stage of it, which was a pipe on top of a tripod, and it would go, they'd go slap, 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 and bing, 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 and nobody complained about it. My grandmother started a rooming house with 15 rooms and a restaurant there in 1910, and nobody had ever complained about it. It's a matter of getting used to it, I guess, but these were transients who might have complained if they wanted to. There was never any objection. You get used to things after a while. Now, I don't know about this flicker business. I'd like to see it myself, and I'd like to see some of the other objections. But there we were, innocent and not suffering. So maybe there's a solution that nobody's thought about.
Yep. Yes, Leo.
Thank you. For those of you that don't know, I sat on the subcommittee and listened to 2 days of testimony, probably 5 hours. I voted on the subcommittee not to support this and to send it back. I would like to say for the record that it was probably one of the toughest votes I've taken, and I'm having a difficult time here today taking the stand. But I have to go back what I said during the subcommittee meeting. As mentioned earlier by the young lady that got up and said that we should be honoring Diane about knowledge of her government, I think that's one of the problems that I'm seeing here. There's a lot of people that testified over that 2-day period that I feel didn't really understand the procedure and understand what was going on, and understanding how the DRI thresholds were not being triggered unless a development was being done. And that, quite frankly, again, after listening to testimony and having some experience sitting on the Cape Cod Commission and then being here as Howard's representative, I feel the ordinance is okay, and I really think we should move forward with it. But with that said, I'm still going to vote to remand it back because I think the citizens should be comfortable in their government and comfortable with the restrictions that they are going to be implying on things, whether that means that they should have some more input or at least take the opportunity to understand the procedure and exactly what's happening better. I think the 3 areas of thresholds can be, 3 areas of minimum standard performance can really be changed slightly. There were a number of very articulate speakers, and it sounds like Paul has also made some comments on some memos that he has circulated. I don't think this needs to go away for 6 months. I'm hoping that if we send it back, that the Cape Cod Commission staff, along with maybe 2 or 3 of the representatives of the people that showed up for those public hearings, can get together and come forward with some very, very minor changes, and let's get something on the books. In regards to the thresholds and the standards of triggering thresholds, I would not like to see that in this particular document, because that's going to spur another group
of discussions and input from other citizens that I think they're going to need their representation. I would not like to see the two issues combined. I think a lot of work has been put into this document, an awful lot of energy from the opponents and proponents of it. There's no reason why it could not go back and come back to us in a relatively quick time frame. And that's what I'm hoping is going to happen, and I'm hoping that both parties will be satisfied with that. The only other thing, I'm going to take just a real brief minute just to tell my colleagues that this is an example of my short tenure on the Charter Review with the weighted vote situation. Because that's another thing that I sit here and think and toy with when I look at us and know that we here are representing our town. And I really am having a problem with the fact that this ordinance is going to either be passed or be remanded back, and it's going to be done on a weighted vote issue situation, because this is clearly affects each town, whether they're a large town, small town, the same. And it's going to be interesting to see how the vote goes. And that's another thing I want the public to educate themselves on, is the way that this body votes. Thank you.
Fred?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, I was out of the country for the last 3 weeks, and I missed a lot of the testimony on this. And I am a proponent of alternative energy and have been all my life, in the last several decades. But I think a lot of good points have been made. And Leo, I think your last point about the weighted vote is absolutely true, given there are towns like Truro with less population but a large land mass, which could support wind turbines. And so I think the weighted vote makes no sense in this case. I think each town should probably have an equal vote, be that as it may. I generally agree with what you're saying too, Leo, about the work that's put in and allowing the commission to move ahead. But I think I'm going to vote against this because I think without any thresholds, there is no protection whatsoever to the community, and I think we should try and ask the commission to move quickly on that. Also, I think that the idea of a DCPC is a very good idea, and I would support the Assembly putting together a DCPC and having a 12-month moratorium on new development in this area. So.
Charlotte?
I just want to make one comment about what Fred just said. Yes, we are elected by our towns, but we are a regional government. And what happens in people who are ill in Falmouth are just as much my concern as if they were in the town of Yarmouth. I think we toss this weighted vote around a lot, but I think we do have the vote, but I look upon it as a regional government looking for not what only is good for my town, but what is good for the other 14 towns.
Okay. Yes, Julia.
It's hard for me to ever think of when I voted because my town wanted me to vote that way. I'm pretty sure I never have. Because I don't represent the town. I am elected by people in Falmouth. Now, because, like Charlotte, I see myself as primarily regionally oriented, it wouldn't be hard for me to vote, and I'm sure my Falmouth people are hearing this, it wouldn't be hard for me to vote the regional interest first. I almost always think, I think I always have. So I'm not opposed to these standards because there's an upcry in Falmouth. I do represent a lot of people who, at the moment, are the most impacted by wind turbines. And we could pass this today, and there's a third tower about to be built. And this would have absolutely no effect on it. So we either have to, I think that the real issue is are there going to be thresholds? If the commission tells us soon that they don't want to go any threshold route, and they're not going to, then the whole DCPC thing does become more important, because even if they come back with wonderful standards that everybody is crazy about, it's going to have a very, very limited impact, because most windmill towers that are proposed won't fall within the threshold, because it doesn't have anything. There is no threshold for wind turbines. There's only thresholds for big properties. We know. I guess my question is height a possible standard that could act as a threshold? I mean, that came up, and I don't really know the answer to it. So that's something I'm curious about. But I definitely don't agree that my vote, 14.X% is too great. I represent that many people. Even if I don't vote for them, I still represent them.
Fred? Just one quick comment. I was not indicating that this vote or any other vote that Julia has ever made isn't standing for all 15 towns. I think the principle, we're talking about the principle of weighted vote. I think that's what Leo was referring to, how this assembly is put together. I'm not talking about individual votes, and I certainly have tried to think about all 15 towns whenever I've voted anything here as well. So, sorry, Julia.
Give you credit for that.
We operate on a weighted vote system. Each of us represents a percentage of the population of Barnstable County, and the way legislative bodies are under the Massachusetts Constitution, everybody's vote is equal to everybody else's vote. So if you're in Barnstable, you have a vote. The people in Barnstable can't have any less of a vote. Their vote can't be any more diffuse than, let's say, the people in Truro. So as a result, the largest town, Tom, represents 23% of the vote. Fred represents 1% or something like that. That's how it works. So so not unlike the commission, where they're set up under different rules where they have one person, one vote. But so that's how these things are generally decided. I just to comment on Julia's question whether height is and the question of further regulation. I think even though we have a regional planning agency and they are empowered to make regulations even on wind turbines, there is a law of diminishing returns. If you push too hard, there's going to be pushback from the state and from other regulators. I mean, towns tried to regulate cell towers, for instance. They tried to ban cell towers, and of course the cell tower industry went to the federal government and they said that's part of interstate communications, and they said you can't do that. So the idea that even though we may request further standards from the Cape Cod Commission, it's not a blank check. We have to create a balance between the rights of those people and the willingness, as Paul said, the willingness of the state to promote wind towers versus the rights of the people on the Cape to live, in a neighborhood where they've become accustomed to and they feel that they're entitled to. So I'm not suggesting we can end this debate by putting in more standards. I just want people to have a realistic attitude toward what can be done. I mean, there are limits to what we can do, and there are limits to regulation in all aspects. So I voted with the committee, the subcommittee, to recommend approval of this. I'm probably going to vote against it now, simply because I realize the inevitability of us taking on this challenge.
Mr. Speaker.
Can't duck it.
If I may, I'd like to, you said that there's no way that we can use height as a detriment.
No, I didn't say. I said that the more regulation we put on cell towers, the more we come up against the inevitability of somebody coming to us and saying, you can't de facto ban these. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I could have sworn I heard you say something about the height when Ms. Taylor asked about the height. But don't we already have something in the Cape Cod Commission that says that you can't build a building over X amount of feet without coming before them. Well, these wind turbines could be the same thing.
Well, what I'm saying is, you can build an office building 5 feet high, 5 stories high, but you can't build a wind tower that's only 10 feet high. So you can't regulate them out of existence by putting in unrealistic standards.
Yeah, I wasn't.
That's my opinion. I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah. Okay, all right. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
The threshold versus the standard.
Okay. I was up, one other thing too. I was up at the same place that Julie and Teresa were this afternoon, and that thing was so loud I had a hard time having a conversation with myself.
Well, you probably didn't say anything important anyway, so. Tom?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move the question.
Okay, well, let's, we need a vote. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second, okay, so move the question is we're voting whether we're going to cut off debate, so we need a separate vote on that. This is the way I do it. I don't know if all those in favor of moving the question say aye. Aye, okay, so now we're back to the main motion. Do we have a motion on the ordinance? Yes, Leo.
I'd make a motion that we remand this ordinance back to the Cape Cod Commission for further review and input.
Now, technically, can we do that, or are we up or down? Or do we have to do up or down?
We have to remand it back.
We have to. So we can.
Yeah, we voted no.
Yeah. Okay. So then your motion is to...
My motion is to vote it down and remand it back to the Cape Cod Commission for further review.
Okay. So second. We have a second on that. So we can't take any more further discussion because I can't do that because...
Question.
Okay, I'll allow the question.
Do we need to spell out some of the things we want? Or is the discussion sufficient?
Well, why don't we take a vote on the
well, because there could be, if we must spell out what kinds of changes we'd be looking for, I've just forgotten whether we need to do that. If we do need to do it, then probably we need the vote to include those.
Well, the problem I'm having, Julia, I mean, I understand where you come from, but when you close debate, you essentially limit yourself to voting the issue up or down. If we'd open it up to to further recommendations, we'd have to go back and debate one way or another. I think it would be cleaner if we simply we vote on the motion on the floor, and then we can discuss what requirements we would make to pass it in the future, if you don't mind. Okay? So I'm going to take there's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of voting this down and remanding it? You need it? Okay. We'll go roll call.
Yeah, we do.
Richard Anderson?
Yes.
Ronald Bergstrom?
Yes.
George Bryant?
No.
Leo Kukunis?
Yes.
Christopher Kanega?
No.
Thomas Keys?
Yes.
Marcia King?
Yes.
Thomas Lynch?
Yes.
Teresa Martin?
Yes.
Paul Pilcher?
Yes.
Fred Schilp?
Yes.
Charlotte Strebel?
Yes.
Julia Taylor?
Yes.
So 85.42. Okay, the motion passes with 83.88% voting yes.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, the motion passes with 83.88% of the delegates voting yes.
Thank you. Julia, did you want to discuss it?
Well, if it's not, I just can't remember whether it's supposed to include specifically written instructions or whether this discussion is sufficient. Not instructions, suggestions, yeah.
Tom?
That's one reason why I wanted to put my concerns on the record, because I think the last time we did this, when we sent one back, we were concerned about whether the Assembly had the 4/5 or 2/3 vote, and we cited 2 or 3 things. Essentially, the commission sent it back to us exactly the way we sent it off, but this time it passed. So for whatever reason, so I think that they have to call through the record to see what each member said as objections. There's probably still time to put something on the record if you want to make a statement, just a general statement, but my view would be that would be the way that they would determine how we were thinking about it.
Probably not. Okay.
Well, I guess I would just have one more question, and I think we're going to have to think about this whole DCPC suggestion. I mean, we've had the challenge, and we'll have to think about it. But I guess if there is a firm decision by the commission not to bring in any thresholds, which I think most of us are interested in, having more towers, potential turbines covered, right? I mean, we are probably not happy with most of them not coming before the commission and avoiding any regulation, essentially, other than the towns. So if the commission is sure that thresholds are out of the question, I guess I'd want a real detailed explanation of why that was the case, and then I would want to know whether height could get involved in standards in addition to what Tom had suggested.
Okay.
And the other discussion of noise, et cetera.
Leo?
I made the motion as simple as possible because, again, I think there's so much input not only by the public but certainly by many of the members here. It is unlike the last one that we sent back where there were two very specific areas that we had questions with, and I know because one of them was mine, and we sent them back specifically because of those two areas. This is entirely different. This one needs to go back and be reworked. And I think, again, as my comments previous, the Cape Cod Commission can do their due diligence with a number of the people who attended the public hearings. And I think that they would have to come back separate anyhow. This minimum performance standard, again, for the record, I would like to see it come back on its own to just move forward. And then the threshold argument or threshold discussion come back on its own as a separate ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
This meeting is televised, and we're going to need some time to switch over the tape. So we take a break now, Steve?
Thank you. Okay, we're back on the air. One of the things that occurred to me, and we'll bring it up now, is the noise, the standard for noise. And one of the speakers brought up the fact that not all noises are equal. I mean, the sound of, I was up in Vermont, and I lived next to a creek, and the creek made a lot of noise, but it didn't keep me awake. But if you have your faucet dripping at night, drip, 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 it can be incredibly annoying. So I don't know how the commission is going to tackle the issue of noise, because some noises are obviously a lot more, especially repetitive noises, a lot more annoying than others, and it's a very subjective standard. And I fear that we are asking the commission to look at some very subjective standards, but I think that with the testimony of people who live nearby, and I think that we have enough experience with these turbines now that we can judge pretty much what types of noises, what types of flicker and so on are annoying and what aren't.
And fortunately, I'm not the one who's going to have to do that, so I can say that. But I think that, I think that Paul, the director of the commission, in one of the earlier public hearings said that they considered briefly regulating all wind towers as they regulate all cell towers, but one of the reasons they didn't do that is because the state is promoting green energy, and wind energy is green energy, and I know there's a lot of people here in this room who support that, but it's obviously the sentiment of the Assembly and a great deal of the citizens that we do want to do it. So, I mean, we're going to have to go down that road, and let the chips fall where they may be, and hopefully we can come up with, or the Cape Cod Commission come up with reasonable standards that will not violate any of the sensibilities of the state or anybody else. So that's what I'm hoping we'll do, and I'm going to leave it up to their discretion. All right, do we have anything else to say? Paul, did you have something to say on this? Paul, did you? You all set? Okay. Well, with that, I guess we'll move on. We have, are you happy with that, Paul? Are you want us to send you a tape of the meeting, or you can take the mic if you want.
No, it's still a bit difficult to make sense how you'd rather have nothing than something. So we're chewing on that, but we're not.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. A point of order. I don't need to be chastised for the vote I just took. Now, I don't know why he's speaking.
Well, I asked him to speak to see if he had enough instructions. Excuse me. I just wondered if he had enough instructions to.
He has the minutes of the meeting.
Yeah, okay. Well,
published minutes of the meeting. You read the minutes.
Do you feel you can go ahead?
We will review the minutes of the meeting, and the process will start from scratch. And it's not like we didn't consider thresholds. We did. I think you'll be hearing from your boards of selectmen and your town managers and administrators, because they weighed in pretty heavily on that issue. So.
Maybe it's the best that we left it at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on now to reports from committees. The only report I have from the committee is from the Government Regs Committee, and I think we've pretty much gone over that ground right here in the Assembly. I don't think there's any other committees that have met. Do we have a report from the clerk?
Yes, in your packet, you'll see there's a notice about the Assembly of Delegates holiday party that'll be held on December 15th, following the regular meeting. Confirmation and payment needs to be received by December 1st to Jenny. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other business to be brought before? Tom?
Just on the issue of the DCPC, we kind of just left it out there, and Mr. Speaker, through you, I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity for you to create an exploratory on this matter? We just saw that the meeting ended a little contentious, and that's unfortunate. My concern is that we leave Barnstable County exposed right now to an industry that might want to get projects in under the time period that the Commission could take to put together more stringent or better regulations. Yeah. And we're now very exposed as a county, and that worries me.
All right. Well, what I will do is I will take this up with County Council and the Commission. The only hesitancy I have is that if we as a body promote a DCPC, we would have to take a vote to do that, and in turn, we would be the ultimate ones who would vote on it. So it's a little bit of a conflict there, you know. So I'm going to find out whether, I think it would be best if we had a sponsor of the DCPC other than the Assembly. I don't think that would be too difficult to come up with. So I'll bring it up with County Council and the Commission, and we'll see where we'll go from there. George, did you have something?
Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, the Advisory Council on Human Services
we're still meeting.
Meets at the Transportation Center in Hyannis.
Okay.
Anyone is invited. Usually there are 20 to 30 attendees and 1 or 2 main topics.
Okay. Is there anything else, Leo?
In regards to our holiday party, has the invitation gone out to the new delegates that have that won election that will be taking office? Be a good opportunity for them maybe to possibly come in and meet us on the social standard.
We have Cheryl Andrews here today, and it's been given to her, and it's also being.
And we also have Spiro Mitrokostas hiding behind the pole there. It's
going to be given out to them either through the mail or if they're here at this time.
Yeah. And I also asked the clerk to send out a copy of the charter and of various county documents to all the incoming freshmen, if you want. So when they arrive, they'll probably know more about the county than we do currently. Okay. Anything else, Tom?
Mr. Speaker, move to adjourn.
Okay. Do I hear? Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
I don't think new delegates have ever been invited to our holiday party.